Hello everyone, this is OddJob here. In today's video, I want to talk a little bit about gameplay theory. This is something that is completely made up, it's all speculation, but in order to actually talk about future gameplay theories that I would love to see in the game, we kind of have to build it on top of a foundation in order to talk about really cool elements that we might be able to see in Star Citizen. If you've ever played D&D or any type of role-playing game, you know that any type of really cool gameplay has to rely on some core fundamentals, and everything has to go back to those fundamentals in order to make the whole gameplay very cohesive. This is something that's just really fun to do because Star Citizen is such a huge video game in terms of its scope and size. Being able to speculate on the gameplay of this is just kind of fun and enjoyable as we wait for the game to be completed. So let's go ahead and dive into some gameplay theory. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about the shared profit economy, or at least that's what I call it. It's actually a terrible name. I just can't figure out a really good name for this. But what I'm essentially saying is that there should be different forms of payment for moving goods within the Star Citizen universe. In all of the online video games that we play right now, the way that we actually make money is that we have to buy it from one player or NPC and then sell it at a higher price to another player, which means that we kind of inherit all of the risk when we actually purchase that item and sell it to another person. So if for whatever reason you can't sell the item, or if the item gets stolen, you lose out on all of your money, and that's the way it is. And for the most part, it works perfectly well. What I would like to see is a different option in order to actually buy and sell goods, which is a more contract-based system with built-in insurance. And the best way to explain this is just through an example, because I think it's going to be the quickest. Say, for example, a player that has been playing for many years has a reclaimer and salvages a bunch of components. Most of those components are probably going to be common level components or used components. Mostly gray items is how many online players would interpret that, and they largely have no value because nobody wants gray market items. And the reason for that is because nobody wants to buy them, because they largely sell for no profit or maybe very little profit. So nobody really wants to take on that risk and purchase those items because they might not be able to move those items themselves. So what I would like to see is some sort of sharing economy in which a Banu merchantman, say for example, can come and pick up all the gray market items, even the premium items, and if the person can actually sell it, the person who owned the reclaimer who actually salvaged the item, he will get 75% of the value it sold at. The Banu merchantman, he can actually take that item, but he doesn't have to put any upfront costs. If he sells it, he gets 25% of the profit. Now, if for whatever reason the item is destroyed or lost, say that the Banu merchantman gets attacked by a pirate and all of the components get stolen, at that point the insurance which gets built into the profit system gets kicked in which case they will only get half the amount. So say 75% profit from the reclaimer gets reduced to 35, and then on the Banu merchantman side, instead of getting 25% of the profit, they would get 12% of the profit. So what's going on here is that there's actually very little risk from the merchantman side actually picking up all of the salvage components, even if they're gray market components, because they're not having to upfront that money. And if they can't move that particular item, it's only taking up storage space. Eventually they can probably move that item to, a newbie player or an NPC. It just might take a little bit of time, thereby giving low quality components, essentially gray components, an actual reason to exist and an actual way to actually generate profit. Because traditionally in the current models that we have for trading in most video games, those gray market items never really sell, and they have to be disposed of through NPCs because nobody will buy them. In this case, it's at least funneling through multiple players, whereby it's a little bit more synergistic, and we can also do something to these components where we can actually make them more attractive to the buyers, which could potentially be players. Like for example, because more of these low quality items or used items are in the market and players can actually purchase them, we can make it to where people would actually buy them as backup, or mechanically they can buy these items, use these items on the ships, overclocking, knowing that they won't last a long time, but they got it for such a cheap price that overclocking them will still give them a boost in performance, and when they need to replace it with another low quality item, it's perfectly fine because they still come out ahead. We can definitely do something that's a little bit more synergistic, in which low quality items and also even premium items are able to move between players without each player having to take on all of the risk, which ends up slowing down the economy. And really, this concept is really geared more towards new players so that they can easily start moving cargo that is actually valuable and start generating profits in which they feel like they're actually making progress and they want to continue playing the game. This is kind of the important part of not having to upfront all of that money and being able to share in some of the profits in which all sides win. So just to wrap it up, what I'm really saying is that the item that's trying to be sold, nobody has to upfront that money until it's sold. This makes moving items between players much easier, and items of poor or low quality still might have a reason to exist inside the universe, and there could be a place for them. This particular concept is also super important in terms of the Banu merchantman being able to accept cargo when the player isn't there. So in other words, say that the Banu merchantman's actually on a pad and their stores are open. When a reclaimer comes by and they have a bunch of items, they can essentially go to any store, and as long as they like the distribution of profit, in other words, they're getting the right percentage they want, they can unload all of the items to be sold onto the Banu merchantman, and that contract is already in place. Now all those items are available to any players that are coming by and visiting that Banu merchantman. So it makes for moving of goods to be a whole lot easier, because now you can set up these profit margins ahead of time, and the players don't always have to be there face to face, agree with everything in order to move cargo. All of these profit margin ratios can already be set up ahead of time. That way merchandise can flow through easily without the players having to be always there in order to buy and sell items. This would make the flow of items significantly easier, and then we don't have to rely on NPC stores quite as much. We can have much more player on player interaction when it comes to trading, because of these contracts in which money doesn't have to trade hands every single time items are transferred from one player to another. If you have any suggestions, feedback, please leave in the comments below. Again, please keep it courteous, and I will talk to you in the next video.